Last into this now, Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe has described the decommissioning of Komati power plant in Mpumalanga as a disaster. He's again calling for the transition to renewable energy not to be rushed as South Africa battles crippling power cuts. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo reports.
On the day when the UN Climate Change Conference is focusing on just transition, South Africa's Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe says the decommissioning of SA's coal power stations must not be rushed. He's used the example of the deactivation of the Komati plant in Mpumalanga last October, which is meant to be transformed into a renewable energy site in the months to come. While the move away from coal-fired generation has been welcomed because of the health hazard that the plant had become, some communities and businesses in and around the Middelburg station have lost their incomes as a result.
Everybody, even those who are actually propagating it as a good example of just energy transition, are now admitting that Komati power station experiment was a disaster. Therefore, we must draw lessons out of that and not just run and collapse power stations without doing a proper study. Actually, there is pressure on the other side that says we must extend lives of the power stations so that we don't collapse supply because it cannot be just a decarbonization and ignore energy poverty.
Critical to the discussions currently underway here at COP28 is how to ensure a sustainable transition to renewable energy without the loss of jobs, creating new employment, whilst maintaining a country's energy security in the mid to long term.
That is the reason that we talk about transitioning at our pace and rate that we can afford as individual countries. It cannot be one fits all. Every country must transition in terms of its ability, in terms of its pace, and in terms of its rate. So that is the reason for that, is because if you depend on external intervention for funding, it means you may not be able to cope with them. Actually, they may not give you the money. And if you get the money, you may be pressured to run at a pace and a speed that you cannot afford.
Mantashe, who leans more towards the sustenance of fossil fuels as a base load of the country's energy mix, says South Africa must not be bullied into certain decisions because of the funding that comes with green energy initiatives.
China built 43 new coal power stations last year. Japan built 23 new coal power stations. India is increasing its use of coal power. We're put under pressure. We're only running 14 power stations. So that pressure is on the weakest and actually on the poorest. And that is where unfairness is. And one of the principles that we're going to be preaching is the importance of agreeing. If there's an agreement, that is a basis for working together. And if we undermine agreement and put more pressure beyond what is agreed upon, then we're going to run into problems. We are agreeing on moving from high carbon emission to low carbon emission. Everybody agrees. Where there is always a conflict is when developed economies want to impose accelerated movement out of fossils, for example. And we find that developing countries are not ready for that. They must be given time and space to move to lower carbon emission at their own pace.
For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo at Expo City in Dubai.